Hey Mean Green family, this is Emily with the UNT We Mean Green Fund, tuning in from my bathtub as we all work and learn from home. I wanted to introduce a new video series that my team and I will be bringing to you called Shelter in Plants. We're going to be talking all about plants, and today's episode will be about hydroponics. Now, if you don't know what hydroponics is, it's just the process of growing plants in a nutrient-rich solution. That means you can grow plants without the use of soil because the plants are taking up nutrients from the water that it's in. I've got a setup in my kitchen that I'm going to show you guys, but I'm also going to show you ways that you can start doing hydroponics in your own house with some simple supplies you probably already have laying around. So this is the hydroponics system that I'm currently using at home. I'll give you a quick tour of its functions. You can see 3 buttons down here, and they are all lit up right now, and eventually they'll go to a flashing mode, and that will alert me if I need to start doing something. Now this first one, the green one, it says add plant food. When it starts to flash, that's my reminder to provide a liquid fertilizer, a food source to my plants so that they stay healthy and happy. Remember, these are growing in water and not in soil, so I need to be sure to give it constant flow of food. Now this next button will flash when the water reservoir becomes low. Our plants are drinking up this water through their roots. That's how they're obtaining their plant food. And when this light goes off, it's just a reminder for me to go and fill this reservoir up so they can continue to live happily. Now this last one over here, it allows me to turn the light on and off. But what's great, I don't really have to use that often because it is on a timer scheduled for when the light comes on and off. So just like us, plants need a rest period, so at night the light is usually not on. It goes off automatically every night. So next I want to introduce you to the plants that are growing in this system. This right here is one plant. It's got a lot of vining parts, a lot of tendrils. These tendrils are the way that a plant can kind of grab onto something to help it start growing upwards. So eventually I'm going to have to put some kind of trellis for this to start growing on. I've seen it starting to grab onto these basil plants on the left. I have 2 of those here, and eventually I'm going to need to start cutting them. I've already been harvesting them. Sometimes I walk by and take a bite of these basil leaves. I've even made some pasta sauce out of them, so it's really cool to have this food growing in my own kitchen. Now, loofah is something you may have never heard of before. I'm going to show you, this is an example of a loofah gourd sliced up. It's just a portion of the gourd, so think of a cucumber or a zucchini, how those look. It's very similar to what a loofah gourd will look like. And when you harvest it, after it's dried up, it creates this really wonderful natural sponge that you can use for cleaning your dishes or any other household cleaning. It's got a really good abrasive function to it, and so I'm growing my very own sponges to be sustainable. Now, what I really want you to see is what's beneath here, what you can't see. So I'm going to pull up this top. This is where the water reservoir is and where the food is. It's been a while since I've actually looked at these roots, so I will expose them to you. Maybe a little bit tricky, and you might be surprised at how large these roots are. So we have 3 plants growing in here. You can see the 2 basil plants. They're starting to grow into each other and kind of intertwine and braid. So when I turn it this way, hopefully you'll be able to see the loofah roots. They look a bit more loose and fine. They are thicker, I've noticed. They do have really healthy roots though. Everything's white and giving me signs that it's a healthy plant and that there's no pests or fungus causing any problems. So it's really exciting to take a look at your plants and see how well that they are doing. One thing you might have noticed on my system are these blue pieces of tape. You might be curious why they're there. And it's just because I'm not using those outlets to grow a plant. I put some duct tape right here just so that the light won't get into the reservoir. If light does get into the reservoir, then that will open up the opportunity for algae to start growing. And if algae starts growing, it will start taking over the resources, such as the nutrients that I'm trying to feed to my basil and loofah plant. So I can't really pull these out all the way, but with this system that I'm growing in, there's like these net pots that I originally planted my seed in. And within it, there is something called rock wool. And that was essentially just a starting substrate that I could plop my seed in so it didn't fall into the water. And here's my seed packet. This was what I originally started with, some tiny seeds. And fun fact, these seeds are actually from my dad's garage from 2012. So several years ago, and these seeds are still viable and providing me food. The older seeds get, the less viable they might be, but I was pretty excited to see that I was able to grow seeds from 2012, and here we are in March of 2020. So I've actually dropped a couple of leaves when I took this apart to show you the roots, but look how big these are. These are really awesome for some pesto sauce. It's really fragrant too. I wish you could smell what I'm smelling here. I went ahead and took some clippings of the basil while I was inside my kitchen, and you can see I do have a piece that we can start propagating. We're going to put this in the right conditions so that it starts to grow roots, and like I said, you can do this with a couple of things you might already have on hand, or you could get the next time you have to go to the grocery store. So we want to emulate a similar process for our cutting that we've made so that it can begin to grow roots. This is the net cup, a better vision of the net cup that I showed you where my plants were already putting off so many roots from. It has a little hole here, and this is also something that I was using. It's called rock wool. It was the substrate that I initially planted the seed in, and it absorbs moisture while it's sitting in this net cup so that it gets to the seed. And as soon as the seed starts shooting out roots, those roots escape this piece of substrate and they start going down into the water, into that reservoir where it reaches its plant food. What's really important too is for the plant roots to have access to air because they need to respire as well. Now, if you don't have these at home, or a net cup like this, here's another example, you can make something from stuff you do have. You can take a container like a yogurt cup and cut some little slots in it so that roots can escape your cup into whatever your reservoir is. So I don't eat yogurt and I don't have a yogurt cup to show you, so I'll go with this here. If you don't have the rock wool, I've seen some people use a cotton ball, and that's just to help absorb moisture and keep it at the roots of the plant. So that's something that you can use as well. Now, when I started my seeds in my garden here, I was able to put a dome on top so that seed could hold in moisture. And we, again, aren't working with a seed now that we've taken a cutting, but our plants right now don't have a root system, so they are taking in some moisture through their leaves, and we want to give it a similar dome scenario, so we'll be growing it in a plastic bag until it starts to create roots for itself and become a bit more substantial. So to prep the substrate that I'm going to be placing my stem in, I'm just going to make a quick cut just halfway through so that I can wrap my stem in and it can continuously have a supply of moisture because this is going to absorb it. You can do something similar if you're working with a cotton ball and just kind of wrap it around your stem. So next we actually have to prepare the stem because of the way I cut it. I'm going to show you some leaves that we need to pull off. You can see that I cut it right where there's a lot of growth happening. This is called a node, and that is where you do want to take a snip from. But like I said, we need to do some things to this before we get going. Now I'm going to snip off these leaves because we don't need them right now. I can make some pesto sauce out of that. I'm going to snip this one right here. We just want a nice clean stem, so I honestly don't need these ones either. Now, here's where we are. I still have a bit more excess than I actually need. I'm going to pull off these larger leaves. See if you can see that. I'm going to just snip right there, a nice clean snip. I have long nails. You can use some scissors if you have that instead. And we're going to take that one. So here's what we're left with. The plant will still be able to photosynthesize. It needs its leaves to do that. So now I have my rock wool prepared. It's going to be soaked in water, and we're just going to place it like this. So it's inside, kind of looks similar to what you saw in my larger system. Now I have my plastic bag, and I'm going to place this inside. Actually, what will help it, you can stick it in your yogurt container or your net cup, just so that it stays standing up and it doesn't fall over, and so that your bag doesn't lean on it. Okay, so I'm going to pour some water on that rock wool and make sure it's really nice and moist. And I have just a little bit of water at the bottom of my bag. You can see that the rock wool is touching the water, and for a couple of days that means I won't need to do anything for this plant. It's going to have just what it needs as long as I have it in a sunny spot. So I'm going to seal this up because, like I said, we want to make sure this moisture is stuck inside the bag or in your dome, whatever you decide to create, and do your best to pull the plastic off of the actual leaves. We don't want that touching. So there we go. We have a started basil cutting. We're going to wait a couple days for the roots to start, and we will soon be able to put it into a hydroponic solution of a nutrient water. That way it can continue to grow and flourish. Now, I've gathered a couple of materials from my recycling that you might have on hand to serve as the reservoir for your plant once it starts to grow roots in its little bag. This was cornstarch. You can use a container that might have held some cocoa powder. I've even seen some YouTubers utilize a solo cup and a condiment cup to serve as their hydroponic setup. Now, this could be the reservoir that you fill up with water and add a nutrient solution to so that your plant stays healthy. And this right here could serve as your cup where the roots start to come out of so that it actually holds the plant. So you could just make a couple of cuts within here and maybe use some toothpicks to let that settle. That way the roots have somewhere to go down into your reservoir. Now, I mentioned that you need to have some kind of food for your plant. I've purchased this online. This is an example of a nutrient solution that some of them are powder, some of them are liquid. You might not have this laying around, so make sure that you do find something to feed your plants. But for now, you can continue to watch the roots grow on your basil cutting or whatever herb cutting you might be doing this on. If you don't want to buy a nutrient solution, you can still put this cutting with roots right into the soil and continue to water it and provide it light. That's going to be really important in either of these scenarios. So I hope this has given you some inspiration while you're stuck at home. Hopefully you can hop onto this new activity, learn something new about plants. This has been really fun to have you on our first episode of Shelter in Plants. This is Emily, and thanks again. We hope you have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy.